So while King Z finishes up the rest of his cheesecake, which he impromptu grabbed 5 seconds before we were ready to record this at 9:30, it's 9:54 now, but I guess we're going to adjust for time zones, even though we're in the same one. But in continuing with our salute to soldiers for May 2024, this week's entry is going to be and I'm going to need you to hit me with the year on this one, dude, because I don't remember, the 2005-ish?
Movie was released
it goes back for a while, right?
2002.
Oh, okay. All right. So 2002's We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson, period piece set in the Vietnam War. So again, this one kind of hits for some of us a little differently depending on the age, just like we said about Black Hawk Down and in Heartbreak Ridge. We may have had parents, other family members, friends and such that actively served and have a very different impression on how they were treated when they got home versus, more modern conflicts from like the 90s and present day. It's, a whole different world, a whole different culture. But yeah, we're going to do We Were Soldiers. Do you have any opening thoughts on the on We Were Soldiers? I know you have an interesting kind of you have like a little bit of trivia, King Z trivia, that you've maybe have met somebody involved with the movie, if I remember right.
Yes.
In one of our talks.
Yes, I have. So
yeah,
We Were Soldiers was one of my picks again to throw in there because one, it is a great movie. It has. When it comes to Vietnam War period movies, it portrays the American, most of them that were made before 1985 or 1989, portrayed the U.S. soldier in a negative light. Take in Platoon, where like they're all like high and drunk all the time. They were pretty much just. You had one that goes crazy and starts killing his own people. The joke about the earlobe necklace.
That was Full Metal Jacket, right? That was that.
They had that too.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, and
yeah.
Full Metal Jacket. Most of these movies portray
Now.
the American soldier in a negative light. This was one of the first ones that dramatized the first combat between North Vietnamese soldiers and U.S. soldiers. And it did it in a way that was, I say, respectful to both sides. Mm-hmm. And the other part is wise because I actually have met Lieutenant General retired Hal Moore. He came.
That was the tie-in. That's the part I was talking about.
Yeah. He came to visit us in Iraq.
Cool, very cool. What was that like? Just as a 20-second aside, that had to have been kind of humbling.
Oh yeah,
a bit inspiring.
He's a really nice guy. You did definitely see he's seen some stuff. Like he has those eyes. Yeah. But like he's all
expression, man.
He's all about the soldiers, and I think the way Mel Gibson portrayed him in this movie, I think captured a lot of like how Hal Moore is. Hal Moore did serve as a consultant on this movie as well. As I talked about before, there are military consultants. He actually served on the movie for this one.
Oh, makes sense. Yeah, I think that this movie, it's also different it's different in that it captures a special or unique rather aspect of the Vietnam War because the unit and again my parlance is weak, just fix it as we go. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on whatever, but I'll just call it the section, the division, whatever. The division of soldiers that Hal Moore was responsible for in the movie, in real life, whichever, is this is where they realized that the failings of the French army that had previously been engaged in the area was lack of understanding the terrain, local customs, troop strength, things like that. So the American military decided they were going to try something new. They were going to invent air cavalry. They were going to helicopter drop units of soldiers in on a loop, almost like an RTS video game. They were going to constantly reinforce to certain positions for 12 straight hours or whatever. Combat drop people in, medevac the wounded out, but never let up. So basically, in the movie as it's presented to us is he's approached by command, whatever you want to call them, about, hey, we need you to put together this team to do this thing. So we see him recruit the lead helicopter pilot, Snake Shit. Mm-hmm. We see him recruit his second in command. We see him recruit the guys that he wants to go in. I thought that was kind of nifty because they hadn't done this before in combat. This was like the first go of this.
This was a whole new type of combat that the U.S. is trying to enter in, same thing with paratroopers in World War II.
In World War II.
Yep. It was a new style of combat. So what they were trying to do is we had helicopters. Most of them were trash haulers and medevacs at the time. They weren't. We never used them for tactical insertions.
Right,
because we didn't
right.
have the tactics. So he was tasked with building the tactics that we still use with AirCav today, and 1-7 still exists. Still exists. Last time I remember, I think it was at Fort Hood, but I think it's moved now. But I'm not sure on that. When I was there, because my brother was stationed, he was part of 1-7. Gary Owen.
Oh,
He was
true.
yeah, in the early 2000s. He was part of that unit.
nice. Yeah, I
And-
think I was just say it's interesting that in the same month that we're kind of checking out, Black Hawk Down, which was it was kind of our modern day familiarization with like urban combat in a lot of ways in Somalia, with like that led into the Iraqi freedom, the Gulf War stuff after that, with like the door to door, the sweeping of like urban centers, the doing contested actions where high civilian casualties were likely if anything goes wrong. And then of course we're watching Band of Brothers anyway. And that was like you saying about the paratroopers in World War II. There were no paratroopers before World War II. They invented the airborne for World War II because they needed to be able to put massive amounts of people in one place at one time, lickety split, because otherwise you're going to get shelled into oblivion. So it's always, the war always changes, despite that saying from Fallout. It does always change.
Well,
It's just
the
the war
tactics
never
change,
changes.
the war itself never changes.
Yeah. No, I got you. I was
The
taking
tactics
the
will
piss
always
out.
change. The technology
Yeah.
will always change.
Oh, dude, we're probably 20 years away from, like, in our lifetimes, even like, from like Halo, like orbital drop shock troopers, like troops stationed on like space stations, hell diving in or some shit. That'd be crazy.
I
I
think
hate to see that, but it's probably gonna happen.
one of the biggest changes we will see is me not leaving my home and fighting a war across the country.
Yeah.
I think that's the more common war of drone warfare, combat drones. I mean, we have the first
everything unmanned.
unmanned. So like we can easily just 3D print another drone and send it back out there. Type war.
Yeah, it's gonna suck when everybody else figures that out, though. You know what I'm saying? we're gonna need some what's the thing they use in Israel right now? The Iron Dome. Like we're gonna need some anti-drone stuff up here real quick. But let's not get too far into the future tech, because we're talking about, like 1965 was when this was all popping off, and they had to put this unit together. 63, 65. It was somewhere in there.
The events of the Idon Valley was in 1965.
Okay, all right. So this whole move, yeah.
So it probably started. It still says it's set in early 1965. I believe it actually started in 1964. The whole like building the unit up, because like you were talking about when he met the helicopter pilot. What's his name, real quick? His Major Bruce. It's Major Bruce.
They said his name a couple of times too. I just remember it was Snake Shit. I just remember
it was his call sign.
the call sign.
Because
Yeah.
he flies lower than Snake Shit.
Yeah. And he did, because when they dropped all the way in, man. That was like a roller coaster from hell. That was a great shot of the helicopters. They're making their way over inland, and then they dove.
Major Bruce Campbell, played by Greg Kingner.
Yeah.
Or Kingner.
Was that Craig Kinnear?
Yeah, Greg Kinnear.
That wasn't Snake Shit.
Yeah,
Snake Shit was I don't think so, dude. Craig Kinnear was the one that traded his spot on the chopper because the other guy was wounded worse, and then he took one in the chest. That was Craig Kinnear. I'm almost positive of that. Oh no, you're right, dude. That's Coulson. Yes, that's Coulson.
Yes, that's Coulson.
From MCU. My bad, I got him mixed up. Sorry guys, I mixed up the white guys. We all look alike. I don't know what else to say about that. You know what I mean? Actually, they do kind of look alike. It's just how it is. Yeah. So I want to say this about the movie, because I think we did a pretty good job on this with Black Hawk Down. This opening with the talks of like pacing and like how it takes an event and manages to cram like this ungodly amount of time into like 2 hours, right? This movie's 2.5 hours long, give or take, right?
Yeah.
But the events where the American unit basically they're helicopter dropping soldiers into that area of operation, and then shit happens, and one of their units gets separated and kind of surrounded, but they can't get to them. So they basically having these small exchanges of fire, artillery shellings, ambushes, and everything else. But it basically goes on for like 24 hours, and like they have to radio into that group Like, yeah, guys, we can't come and get you until tomorrow morning. Like, stay frosty, we're coming. We just can't get there. And you never feel like there's a down moment that's unnecessary in this entire film. Like, again, with Black Hawk Down, it's just tense. Once they get there and the first shots go, it's like there's no games. There's nothing funny. There's no stupid Marvel humor because it would have been largely out of place, obviously, given the subject. But you feel for these guys that are like face down in the dirt, awake for a day and a half straight with like rifles pointing into trees that are shooting at them. It's trees shooting at them. You know what I mean? Until like the close quarter stuff pops off, which was just insane. You know, so just the pacing, I'll just say, because the pacing's my big thing for these movies. 2.5 hours long, check my phone 0 times, check my watch 0 times. You know what I mean? Didn't feel compelled to take a pee break or anything. Like, it grabs you and it drags you in. What do you think about pacing in this one?
The pacing's great in this movie. Certain points that you can feel that it wasn't right, but it was just trying to capture it. Was a couple of the cutback scenes during the battle towards near the end, which I'll explain later in detail what I'm talking about. But the overall pacing, like from start to finish, like you have it where they explain what's going on, where they show the massacre of the French that pretty much started this whole thing. Then
Brutal opening.
Then you have them talking about like how it was hard for terrain and stuff like that, so they're going to try some new tactics. Bring back, start this thing called the air. They're gonna bring the cavalry back, but instead of horses, we're gonna try something different, hopping in and out with helicopters. And then that's when they bring in Hal Moore, who was at the time testing experimental parachutes.
Yep.
And they brought him in, Harvard guy, which
they show you that when he's they show it 2 really good ways. They show it through his actions directly with how he's intelligently prosecuting his side of the war, where he's taking notes based on recon that they have, intel that they have, and the failings of the French that he had, where he's like, oh, what happened here? Disrespect for the local tradition, a non-understanding of the terrain, troops. Like he had like literal like a notepad that he was going down and looking at perspective.
That led to the massacre.
But also, when he's moving into his new house, and the other guys in the neighborhood, there's the new colonel, yada, yada. What do you think? I hear he's a Harvard guy. He's literally unpacking his station wagon and his 5 kids, but he's got an armful of books and diplomas.
Yeah, it's like all like stacked up.
Right. It's stacked. So like you know from get-go that's just good creative storytelling, painting a picture of what a character is without having to explain too much.
And that was the other thing that they were working on too, is with the tactics. Like he was writing down capabilities of the helicopter. He's writing down capabilities,
top speed, loads.
Yeah, how much it carry, how much fuel it has, so how many times can it go around before it has to refuel. So, So like that
was all good.
He was understanding his capabilities as well as looking up on what's going on there. It just happened to coincide with it was the same person that he was studying that led to the French massacre, is the same commander that he actually went up against, which I thought was great. I think they actually met years later and talked.
Oh, get out of here. I didn't know that.
I think they actually did. I can't remember if it... I think I heard something like that they actually met up and that they had, like, after the war was over and everything.
Yeah. I think that was one of the... And like you were saying at the beginning... This was a unique war movie in the sense that I don't remember seeing anything else like it. I mean, not anything serious anyway, where you're seeing the play, the counterplay, the check and the balance between Mel Gibson's character and the NVA commander throughout the movie, where the NVA commander is the same guy. You know what I mean? He's got maps on his table, like all diagrammed up. He's like, we're going to move left flank here. We're going to send these guys here at morning. We're going to hit them when they're at their weakest. We're going to do this. You know, we're going to choke them off at that landing zone, and then they're done. We kill everybody they send. They stop killing. They stop sending people. Yeah. You know, like that was their plan. You know, it was just interesting to see that balance, that back and forth.
One of the big ones was, they kept cutting back. Like they were talking about, like, take the creek bed, go down here, and then it cuts right to him. Like, we need to protect that creek bed. That's going to be our death. So you could see their minds working the same. And one of the big ones was know thy enemy. Yep. And that's one of the things that he did by the studying. He knew what they were going to do. It shows a lot of how important proper intelligence is and actually doing your due diligence and preparing like this, because Yeah, and he was very truthful. Like if you saw the pre-deployment ceremony, which we still do today for deployments as well, he was talking about, I can't promise I will bring all of you home alive. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I would guarantee you that we will all come home, dead or alive. I will not leave a man behind.
And that's a setup that has the payoff, and you know we're big fans of payoff here on the channel because he gives that speech, he loses guys, he's actively like, command, we need a head count on our people. Oh shit, we're -2. Like they literally took a team out in the dark
to find
him, basically inspect the dead to find him. They found him, and of course it's spoiler alert for a 20-year movie. It's one of the guys that you knew because he had a name and dialogue. He absolutely was going to die. You know what I mean? The Chris Klein character, and they break that in a heartbreaking way. We all knew that character was already dead because we saw him shot trying to rescue, his battle buddy, or you know what I mean? Like he went back out for that guy.
Yeah, who got shot in the leg.
Right. And then he takes 2 through the back and he dies. Yeah. But when Mel Gibson's scouring the battlefield for his missing guys, we just see the bracelet that guy's daughter had given him, like his little girl had made for him. You're like, oh, that sucks.
And this one I was talking about where, it was a little disjointed with the cutback because they cut back home. So I'm going to talk about this.
Talk about that because I agree. This was, if there was anything that was non-conducive to the pacing being like butter smooth, it was this. Like, dude, talk about that for a few. Hit that.
So one of the things that this movie did really well, it didn't just capture the war with the soldiers, it captured the war back home as well. It was one of the first movies I remember where it actually captured the war back home. And it started with a taxi driver coming up, and then they see it driving away.
Wait. You skipped one. Huh? The wives all get together and have that first chat.
Oh yeah, before the deployment.
Yep. But that has key ramifications because then that shows you as these women all lose their husbands, you have at least a minor connection to the gut punches that they're all going through, especially with the discussion of racism that they had with that particular married couple and the naivety of the other woman, the white woman. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there was a lot in that scene. But continue. I didn't mean to steal your segment.
Yeah, well, they did it, and today in the military they call that they have a organization called FRG, which is the Family Readiness Group, and it was to pretty much do exactly what these ladies Hal Moore's wife took upon herself to do, and she pulled in all the units' wives and kind of brought their try to pull their resources just in case when they're gone they have to handle the things at home. But one of the big things that happened at home, and something the Army wasn't prepared for, which they are now. I mean, I was a casualty notification officer, and that's something I am very happy I never had to do. So
yeah, I can only imagine.
That would probably have been the worst day of my life if I had to actually go and tell someone that their loved one is not coming home. Yeah. But back then, they sent it by telegram, and they sent it by the cab company, and you see Hal Moore's wife, Julie, was it Julie Moore? Is her name?
No, that was
Julie Moore. Julie Moore.
I thought that wasn't Madeline Stowe.
Oh no, Madeline Stowe played her. The character's name is Julie Moore.
Oh, I thought you said Julianne Moore, like the actress. I was like, wait a minute, no, that's not it. Yeah, my bad. Yeah.
No, yeah, Madeline Stowe playing Julie Moore.
Gorgeous Madeline Stowe. My God, was she gorgeous.
She saw a cab leave one of the other officers' wives' home, and she comes up, and they find out that her husband didn't make it home, and you saw him die earlier on the battlefield, and then they had this cut back here. Now, this is the part where it's a little disjointed because the events that are happening at home, getting that telegram, would have happened probably a week or longer after the whole battle. But I like the way they captured it because it captures the war at home. The soldiers don't have it's like 90% there, actually 50-50, because you have no idea what the spouse back home is going through, and today you have male spouse at home who are going through the same thing. So you have that. I mean, communication's a little bit better these days, like email, video chat, stuff like that. We
have some instant stuff now, but you were 17,000 miles away in 1965.
And
shit didn't move
letters
quickly.
Took a week to a week and a half to arrive.
Right.
So the communication wasn't instantaneous as it is today. So there's a huge unknown, and then to find out that your husband is not coming home because he was killed in combat by a telegram dropped off by a cab driver. So you have then she's coming back, and there's a cab driver at her house, like knocks on the door.
Oh, yeah.
And she comes out, and he's like, "Hi, ma'am." He takes his hat off, and he's like, "I was wondering if you could help me. I'm trying to find this address." And she flips out because she knows what it's about, and she goes off on the guy. And then he has like the perfect response. Like he just lowers his head, starts walking away, and then he stops. He's like, "I don't like this job, but I gotta do it." And then she even feels you just see a little remorse in her for going off
she
on
pulls
him.
herself back in, right? Yep.
And she's like, "Give it to me. I'll do it." And then she stops. And then he's about to get in the cab, and she's like, "Tell everyone else at the cab company if you have any more, bring them to me."
So she's the colonel's wife. That was balls.
Yeah.
Yep. Balls move.
She goes and she starts. She runs into Carrie Russell's character. Was it Barbara? I'm not even going to try to say the last name. Like Gogana. She's
Gagan. No, it was just Gagan.
Gagan.
Gagan. Yep. That's how the name went. Yep.
Yep. Married to the Chris Pine character, who they just had a new baby.
They just had another baby. Yep.
That just hits even harder. So she goes. She's like, "I'll go with you." And they take that one, and it was the African American lady, who had the great response to the laundromat that only did whites only, and
no coloreds.
Yeah, and she was like, "My husband's clothes are clean anyways," and I was, So
that was a good scene though, man. That was some good shit. She said, it's not about the country today that doesn't love him. It's about what we can accomplish and build in the future that he's fighting for. And I'm like,
because they know what they're
movies
fighting
used to
for.
get it, man. Yeah, movies used to get it. And that touches on that pre-deployment scene you were talking about, where Hal Moore delivers a speech. It says, I can't guarantee you all come home, but as of today, you are like in so many words. You are all the same. It doesn't matter if you're tall, short, white, black. I don't think he said. I was waiting for him to say yellow, but I don't think he actually went yellow.
No.
Because that would have butted up against something uncouth. But he basically names every ethnicity, and the camera flicks to images of these guys. As they're popping off.
He says we have Japanese soldiers. We have
Puerto Rican, white, black.
White, black, and then he was like, some of y'all are like discriminated against for being here, but we are going home where that doesn't matter.
Right.
It was great.
Yeah, it was good. They had a bunch of good stuff there. And just side note, because Winter Wolfstone always points out beautiful women in movies. Carrie Russell, my God, right up there with Madeline Stowe. They couldn't have picked two more beautiful women in 2000 and whenever to make that movie to fill those roles. But
back to the FRG.
Back to the FRG.
And then they come back from doing that one, and there's a whole pile.
Stack.
And then they're like, she just takes it and puts it in person. Like, we won't look at them. We'll do one at a time. We'll just take it out and go. And then like they finish up, and she's like, if there's any more tomorrow, just come get me. I'll come do it with you. So you cut back to later, and Julie Moore gets the telegram for Barbara.
Yeah.
And she goes to the door, and her eyes are filled with tears. And she's like, "Oh my God, you got yours!" And she just shakes her head and just looks at her. She's like, "No, I got yours," pretty much. Yeah. And it was.
I don't even think she spoke it. I think it was unstated. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then they cut back, and then that's when they zip up the body bag with the Chris Pine's character dead.
Yeah.
So
that was. And they gave you just enough on that character too to telegraph that he was going to die, because they have the whole scene with him and Hal Moore in the chapel, being like, what do you think about being a father and a soldier? Yep, he's like, I think being great at the one makes me good at the other.
Yep, perfect.
I like his prayer in that scene too, where it's like, this and that, pray for my men, pray for the enemy, this and this. But, as an aside, if we could just make sure you listen to our prayers and not theirs, that'd be fucking great. Whatever he says, what I mean? It was funny.
And ignore the prayers of those heathenists and help blow them straight to hell.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that sounds about right. And see, we dump on this all the time, right? In the other crap that we watch. And for you guys that don't know, we watch a lot of crap. So if you ever want to check out our backlist, we have watched some crap and roasted pretty good. We'll be roasting The Acolyte next month because Star Wars is going to take one more kick at the can. And I've talked King Z into watching that garbage too. Yeah, I know. We're all bucking up for that. But, you know, like all the humor in like Marvel and Star Wars feels the same. Like it was written by like 8th generation observers of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Joss Whedon. Everything needs to be as fake witty as it can be. Like we've lost other kinds of humor. And I think that joke that he gave in the chapel at the end of the prayer, we don't make that kind of humor anymore. Like that kind of like quip. You know, we do the other stupid shit.
And in this movie, there's tons of them. Like, there's the whole Sergeant Major, Sergeant Savage interactions in the morning when they're still in Garrison. Is like, great day, Sergeant Major. He's like, how do you know what kind of goddamn day it is? And then
Sam Elliott.
He's like, beautiful. He's like, beautiful day, Sergeant Major. He's like, what are you, goddamn weatherman now?
Dude, I love that guy.
Then it pays off at the end. Because we talked about, like, there was a platoon that got cut off because their lieutenant, which they hinted at earlier, he's trying to win awards.
Win awards.
You got a leader over here, and that guy's trying to win awards. And he starts chasing down, which pretty much runs them into an ambush.
First contact. Effing contact, dude.
And they get surrounded. They're out there for almost 2 days.
Yeah.
Before they can get someone to, because they tried one other time to go out there and they just got hammered at the creek bed.
They got gunned. Yeah.
And then they finally broke through the next night and found 2 people alive out of that whole platoon.
Yeah.
Who there was a ton of good combat and just story building that happened on that knoll, and like how he brought that like their own artillery right on top of them, danger close.
Yep, that was good stuff. And they did that in increments too, and that's what made it that. And that's an example of how you increase tension in like a really effective, meaningful way. He's like, walk it back 50. Like he's basically, you could see it in your head, the firing line just getting closer and closer to where they are, and then that kind of has a little payoff. Well, not a payoff, but like a stakes raising into like some other shit they got to get over with the napalm strike that comes in. Where like their radio guy's just calling shit in left, right, and center, but one gets away from him, even though Hal Moore's like, call him off. Call that one off, but like it's just too late. He calls off the last one, but that second to last one pumps in a little too close.
Yeah, I think
and you can just see, and guys getting
it's
awful.
For like its own discussion, the whole broken arrow scene.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
But Sergeant Klein is Sergeant Savage is one of the ones that is rescued. Him and his specialist are 2 of the ones back, and they're put in the casualty collection point. Yep. And then like he's sitting there, and the Sergeant Major Lieutenant goes, "Now it's a beautiful day, Sergeant Savage." Like, it had that payoff. He had another good joke. Talked about like me.
He's got a few.
Flying in to that, and like they were like, Hal Moore was unsure about it, like because he didn't get to make the plan for the whole thing. And he's like, maybe you want to get one of those M16s. I was just
gonna say this one.
Like, the way I see it, there'll be enough on the ground if I really need one.
Yeah, dude, dark humor, dude. I like the one where he's it's not really a joke. Actually, this guy, he's taking a piss on the who's the actor that played the sniper in Private Ryan? I can never remember. He was the photographer in this one. He was the journalist.
Oh, Barry Pepper.
Okay, so he basically the shit starts to hit the fan after he's been introduced as like the photographer and this, that, and the other thing, and the Sam Elliott character's like, ain't gonna be taking any pictures from down there, boy. Like, it was just too funny. Like dark humor again. Like, dude, like 80 guys just got killed. It's not funny, but like it's funny. That he made that joke in that situation.
He throws the weapon on him, and he's like, I'm a
non-combatant.
He's like, there's no such thing today.
Yeah, dude. And but there's another layer of that scene if you're watching close. What's that character's name again, King Z? The soldier. So Joe Galloway.
The photographer, right?
No. Sam Elliott's character, the soldier. Mel Gibson's second.
Sergeant Major Basil Plumley.
I'm just gonna call him. I'm just gonna call him Sam Elliott because that's who he is in my head.
Just call him Sergeant Major.
Whatever. The Sergeant Major, as he's giving the photographer the gun and throws a magazine at him, he's throwing magazines to the wounded, basically reinforcing the point that no, there are no non-combatants in this situation. Like Charlie got us surrounded here too. Like not just at the unit that got cut off. Their entire encampment was surrounded to the point where they lost their initial landing zone, and they basically had to fabricate by demoing trees out a different spot for choppers to land down and take the wounded. Which is another badass scene. Like, we need to clear these trees.
clear these trees right over here. We need to make a
Right,
new
dude.
LZ.
Mel Gibson's
Then
like
they
a superhero in this
main
role.
LZ.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
So here's a little trivia for you, because you just used the term. You called him Charlie. Why are they
Yeah.
called Charlie?
I don't know, dude.
All right, so
I have the slightest.
they were the Viet Cong, was
Yep.
their name. We
Yep,
shortened it
yeah.
to VC.
Yep.
So the phonetic alphabet is Victor Charlie, so they just
Okay.
shortened it to Charlie.
Okay. There you go. Also, I thought it just sounded cool. Charlie in the open. And it just works. But some shit like that. But I want to talk real quick because so we've talked about Back Home. We've talked about like where they're operating from, like up front. Let's talk about snake shit. Not actual snake shit, guys. If you're tuning in late, we're talking about the lead helicopter pilot of the chopper group that was bringing soldiers in and taking the wounded out. He has some of the best character development and like arc, I think, in the movie, where he's kind of like he's a hot dog pilot. Mel Gibson's character, when he meets him, brings him a beer because he explains it outright. He's like, I'm figuring you're not going to fly into a bullet storm for people you don't know, you don't like.
Yeah.
I'm Hal Moore. Here's a beer. So these guys are already off to a good start, respectful start. When the shit hits the fan and the medevac choppers bail and won't land, Snake Shit brings his guys in to touch down and take the wounded out. And then when they get back to base with the wounded on night one, the lead medevac pilot or the medevac commander, whatever, how that works, tries to run his trap. And dude, fucking Snake Shit draws his gun.
Yeah.
And it's like, whatever, I don't even remember what he said because my jaw's still on the ground. Like, he was going to shoot this dude in front of like 15 other people.
Yeah, he
like, that was it.
So the way he said it was, he's like, you're strong enough to fight me, but you're too weak to fight the enemy.
Yeah. But he drew his gun.
Yeah, and then he goes,
in army base.
One of the other
I will
pilots
kill
kind of
you.
broke it up. He's like, if I ever
yeah.
see you again, I will kill you.
I will kill you.
Like, just straight deadpan, no
I was
emotion in it.
By that point, he had already quieted down. Yep. By that point, they weren't fighting words anymore. Like, he was issuing an edict at that point, But dude, did you see the expression on his face when his boy calms him down? Like, that encounter broke that man in that moment. Like, after the hero adrenaline wore off.
He was also in that seat for, was it like 18 hours?
Oh yeah, dude, getting shot
flying
at.
Rounders. Flying rounders.
Getting shot at continually.
Yeah,
Because you could hear it.
At. He saw one of his guys go down. One of the other pilots go down.
Yep. Did you catch the scene? It reminded me of the part where Hoot tells he tells somebody at base camp in Somalia, it might help if we wash the blood out of the Humvees. Like, the choppers, they just take buckets of water and sling them like through the cabin. That's it. Like, they just rinsed it because they had so many people wounded in it, bleeding to death, that they had to do that. Nobody probably could have stood there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they had a fighting
that was
force
brutal.
of 395 people to be doing that.
Yep. And they lost like 80 on day one or whatever they said. Like, they mentioned a number, I think.
Yeah, and that was,
something bad.
Yeah. We talked about like the scene of him coming in, his boots come off the ground.
Oh
he
yeah, I forgot
to be the first
that.
one on
on the ground.
And then he's like, my boots will be the last one to leave the battleground. So when he was standing there, the last helicopter leaving after the big finale, which we're talked about here in just a second, Sergeant Major is like, all of our men are accounted for, dead or alive, they are back. He's like, all right. And he just sits down, and then they have the scene of his boots
the last shot,
ground, and then the helicopter coming up.
Good shit. Attention, Zack Snyder. That is a setup and a payoff. That is visual storytelling. That's bookended. He said he was going to do that. Then when they got there, he did that. There was a tracking shot of his boots coming out of the helicopter and past the rail and onto the ground. And then when they left, it was a reverse of that same shot. It pans low, and you see his feet come up, and he sits back against the door, and they bounce.
And
that's how it's done.
Not once, but twice, the higher ups tried to take him off that battlefield.
Oh, dude, that was glorious. That second call he got, where he was like, "I am in a battle." Like, I will not leave my men here. Like, dude, glorious. Yeah. Too good. But let's. We got two really big scenes that I think we got to talk about.
Yep, definitely.
We have the finale for sure. That final push, because you and I were just talking, like we were talking the other day in the car when you called me. I was like, if it happened that way, really that way, they should teach that if they don't in like war college, you know, and you would imagine has on a general level. Right. Like he studied up Sun Tzu, other tacticians, Tecumseh, other great, you know, the Custer's Last Stand and Fall. They even make the Cutler comparison, you know, and then like Sam Elliott's like, unit. Custer was a pussy. Oh, that's right. It was. That's right.
Yeah,
his cavalry
unit. Custer's unit, 1-7. That's right. That was Custer's unit. That
but it actually they mention it. They mention it in the movie. Oh, you know, I wonder if this is how Custer felt. And then Sam Elliott's like, yeah, he was a pussy, and you're not. And I'm like, oh my god, dude, yeah, dude,
you're not, sir.
That was great, dude. He was basically Gunny Highway in a different movie. It was the same guy. Right, Eastwood and Sam Elliott play the same guy.
It also shows the dichotomy between enlisted and officer.
Yeah,
which
is
sure. a great, great comparison. So Sergeant Major had made all 5 combat jumps. Sicily and the one in Korea. He answers to me and me alone.
Yep, it was good shit. But dude, I'm with it, and just I'll give the Sam Elliott character, you know, his 15-second due. Dude, he's got a line at one point when they realize they're surrounded at about the midway point where he goes, "Gentlemen, prepare to defend yourselves." And you got like wounded, young men, like 18, 20 years old, right? We got guys that are wounded and sitting back to back to prop each other up and cover different fields of fire. But this son of a bitch is just standing out there with a sidearm like it's World War I, right? Mm-hmm. And his dudes are getting within range. He's single tap. No wasted ammo, no wasted effort.
Yeah. Let's talk about the wounded. During that same scene, first thing that came in was a grenade, and one of the wounded rolled over on top of it.
Yeah.
And then, so one of the big scenes that we need to talk about next when we talk about the wounded, we need to talk about the broken arrow scene.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
but pinning it. Wait, hold up. The photographer and his Japanese friend Takayama. Was that Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
He was wounded before that scene, right?
He was wounded by that.
It was the broken arrow scene. Okay, he was wounded by that. Okay, because I wanted to talk about, because when we talk about gruesome, we've mentioned this, I think, to each other before, that, you know, Wind Talkers that came out around the same side played up a little bit more around the same time. Played up a little bit more of like the violent effects of like the warfare and whatnot. This movie has this one scene that we're going to talk to, the broken arrow scene. There's a particular wound that turned my stomach, and I've got like 25 years in like healthcare, bedside, all kinds of stuff. It literally almost made me throw up. Like I forgot it happened from when we saw this years ago. But yeah, dude, set up the broken arrow scene, dude, because I think this is your bag. This is entirely.
So
I know this probably got to you pretty good.
In American lingo, the term broken arrow has 2 meanings, actually. One is that there was an accident that involved a nuclear weapon that does not cause a nuclear risk, does not include a risk of nuclear war. The other term is that a ground unit is facing immediate destruction and all air cover comes to support, and that's what they got. They called in broken arrow over the radio. And like you saw, like they cut to aircraft carriers launching aircraft and all the other aircraft. And now he's in contact with all of these aircrafts, calling them in on vector, distance, grid squares of where they're going to drop it. He's like, I think they had in this scene, I believe it was at least 15 different aircraft coming in, dropping ordnance and
dude, it was nuts. All types, all aircraft types, everything. It was
dropping
nuts.
Napalm bombs, doing gun runs, dropping standard rounds.
They were calling and that's on top of the artillery that was already continually shelling danger close, like you said, their position.
And so they're just decimating the enemy at this, but the enemy has so many. They found out early when they captured a scout that they landed where there was pretty much a division, 4,000 men of enemies. There's going to be 395, and they only had 60 on ground for the first half hour. Half hour by themselves with 60 men. But going back to the broken arrow, so he's calling these aircrafts, and you're just seeing like them come in and just like explosions everywhere. Numbers get jumbled. He's trying to control 15 aircrafts, 5 guns, and also trying to circulate command orders because he's the direct radio operator for the colonel. So numbers get jumbled. He puts 2 aircraft on the wrong vector. and it put him right on line of what they called the Termite Hill. That's where he set up his command post, was the Termite Hill. And one of the napalm bombs came and dropped and wiped right across their mortar team section, causing friendly fire. I think fratricide is the actual tactical word for it. They committed fratricide, and you saw. So earlier you had Joe Galloway taking pictures, and he's taking pictures of Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, I just had my baby was just born today, and took a picture, and later they come to see Jimmy, and half his body is burned.
Oh yeah, dude.
Just completely burned, and he's screaming. All he could do is scream, and we gotta get him to the chopper. You grab his legs.
Ugh.
And he grabbed his legs, and it just
it was like deboning a chicken, dude. Yep. It was like deboning a chicken leg.
And then the man's like, hey, I gotta take care of these guys. You gotta get him on that chopper. And he picked him up and carried him, put him on the chopper, still all burned, and his last words was, tell my wife I love her. And he's the second guy to actually say those lines. Just tell my wife I love her. He's like, tell my baby too. And then they flew off, and then he's still on the helicopter. It's and you kind of see him just stop moving.
Yeah, he died. He died lifting off. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Dude, that was disgusting. That was the effects work there. Simple, practical, charred meat, bone, gross. Nope. Disgusting. But that's all good stuff. Again, that's a small character, Joey Galloway there, right? The photographer that has an arc in less than an hour of that movie. I wanted to come tell a story. I bet, I'm come from a military family, but it seemed to me it made more sense to have a camera than a rifle or whatever he says, so I could tell the folks back home, because they need to know what's happening here. He goes through everything he goes through. He goes from being the non-combatant to picking up a rifle and basically saving his own life, but assisting the unit. And then when he stays in contact with, he stays kind of in contact with Hal Moore a little bit, I think, or I might be remembering it wrong, where he's like, oh no, it's just the end of the battle, where he goes, I don't know how to explain what just happened here.
Yeah.
I don't know how to tell this story.
I don't know how to tell this
And Hal
story.
Moore tells him something.
He's like,
you'll figure it out, you'll do your best.
He's like, you got to tell this story. You got to tell them how my men died.
Right, or it was for nothing, yada, it was that kind of speech. But then they have one more great part where it's the denouement of the movie, where where Galloway's at his typewriter at home trying to do it, and you can he's just haunted by what he sees. He looks out in the distance, gets all bleary-eyed, and starts to sob. You know what I mean? Because he still doesn't know how to do this, based on the horror that he saw. I thought that, and you knew when that broken arrow scene was gonna pop off, you knew it was a big deal. Because there was Mel Gibson's character, Hal Moore had to come to grips with making that decision. He's looking all steely-eyed all around, looking all grimacy and lockjaw. And then when he calls it in, everybody in the command station back wherever at base, they're like, oh shit, broken arrow. Yeah. Oh Lord. And then they jump into the whole, you see the aircraft taking off the carrier and shit.
Yeah.
But they knew people were going down then.
Yeah, you saw
it was probably
CIA
statistically
guy.
likely.
You see this? There's no way to hide it now.
Yep. Oh, and then they pan down to the map, and it's got on the tactical map the one American flag surrounded by 12 VC flags on the map.
Yeah.
They were boned. So they nobody was getting out of that unless they did. But that scene, that's kind of the big finale special effects scene. The finale push they make at the end, that we'll talk about in a second, is great. But they spent their entire budget on the pyrotechnics involved in blowing up whatever part of Nebraska where they filmed this or wherever they shot. Because, like you said, dude, they just poured it on for 10 minutes, it seemed like. It was it was just on. It was just popping off for forever. But I wanted to talk about some of the smaller engagements real quick that kind of led into that. We mentioned that there was some night ops that happened when they went out to recover the bodies. But they had this one great scene, and then again, this is the Americans making good use of what they had, where they had a suspicion they were being advanced on, and the radio guy calls in for an illumination round, a flare type round. Mm-hmm. And once the flare pops, there's VC 10 feet in front of them, and all of a sudden just thousands of rounds fired at close combat range. And holy shit, had they not called that, you're overrun and dead. That's it. The whole situation's over, because we saw that later when some survivors, the unit that they did rescue, we saw VC soldiers past them. Like they were just like laying dead ass still, right? And those are the guys that ended up getting illuminated, I think, and chopped up, if I remember the sequence right. Like basically they had to remain completely dead ass still out there in the jungle and on the mountainside to not be detected. But the close quarter stuff gets brutal along the way as that position's about to be overrun. We get Mel Gibson on the radio because this sets up another little mini through line that we were talking about. He's on the radio calling in some shit. They focus in on one single VC soldier who's affixing his bayonet, the guy with the glasses. Mm-hmm. He's affixing the bayonet. He goes on his own little bayonet charge. And, Hal Moore's back is turned and you're like, uh-oh. Like, if you're just watching this movie casually, you don't know who Hal Moore is. You don't know if he's living, dying, if it's fiction or not. People don't pay attention to stuff anymore. But Mel Gibson swings at, like, the last second and gives him, like, a John Rambo one-armed, hip-fired Call of Duty shot to the dome and puts him down. But that's a key guy. That's a key Vietnamese soldier because at the end, when they're, like, sweeping the battlefield, when they're wrapping up, they take his diary. Right.
Yeah.
And they're looking, and one of the translators says, translated, it's mostly personal stuff. It's no intelligence value. Hal Moore takes it, and when they're doing the wrap up at the movie, they show that not only is he kind of like narrating like his own story of like what happened to them, but it had that dual meaning that it also applied to the Vietnamese soldiers as well.
Yeah.
Because Hal Moore's taken the diary and sent it to that man's widow. Because there was a picture of a young Vietnamese woman in it. He made sure the journal found its way home. I was really touched by that scene. That if that actually happened again, Hal Moore's a stand-up guy. Like he's up here as far as human beings go. For just having that kind of sentiment or honor, I guess is the word. Integrity would be another kind of word. We see the impact after that when it's all wrapping up. But we'll leave the finale talk for the finale talk. We see the wrap up where he gets that quiet moment by himself and he finally breaks down a little bit on his own.
Yeah.
And he starts to sob about like what's happened. You know what I mean? So
like
he's not. This isn't a superhero movie.
How he can never forgive himself. Yeah. Because I lived and my soldiers and my men died.
Yep. And my men died. Yep. So this isn't a superhero flick. This isn't Chuck Norris 1988 Delta Force. Like it wasn't supposed to be that. It was supposed to be as accurate a depiction of that battle, that sequence, whichever, and the guy that led it. So I tend to, that's, I think, I like when they stick to that kind of thing. But dude, let's talk finale just because I was shocked because I didn't remember from the movie. So they're still all surrounded 36 hours in or however long it is. They've recovered their unit that was cut off, but the larger American group is still surrounded essentially. We can only drop into
the Broken Arrow thing during the day. They re-secured their perimeter around. But they knew they didn't have enough men to hold off another charge like that again. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what you see them talking. Like you see the colonel talking. He's like, "We're gonna come here. We're gonna come here. We're gonna come through here, and we're just trying to pretty much overrun them. We're gonna bring them." You're
talking about the Vietnamese commander is saying that to his second.
And then it cuts to
putting together the plan.
It cuts to Hal Moore, and this is when they're doing the night ops to find the two bodies. He's like, "They're gonna rush us in the morning." He's like, 'cause that's what I would do. He's like, I would come from all facets and just, then he would get his massacre. And that's when they had the speech about Custer and stuff like that. And you didn't see his wheels turning. Mm-hmm. So it comes daytime. And like you see the soldiers getting over the like getting ready for that huge charge. Like they're like inching up, they're moving. Yep. What they didn't know is that Hal Moore pulled all of his troops from around the perimeter and staged a full-on frontal assault. Like if we're going to go down, we're going to go down swinging. And it was a full-on counterattack charge against soldiers that were not ready at the time, and they're coming up. And they just
and it was uphill.
Yeah,
uphill.
Yeah, he turned and he's like fits bayonets. He knew it was going to be close combat. So they put their knives on the end of their blades, which does make the weapon fire a little more inaccurately. That's one of the big flaws of the M16A1 rifle, which is what they used in this movie because it was brand new at the time, is that it had a full auto setting. But the problem with the full auto setting is that when you fire it, it starts pulling up. No matter how tight you pull it into you, it pulls up.
It's physics.
Yeah. So
unavoidable.
That's why when they created
that weapon, rifle, unavoidable.
Yeah, when they created the A2 rifle, it has a 3-round burst, so it could stay on target easier. So that was one of the major design flaws with the M16 at the time.
The band.
I don't think they captured it too well. I mean, this movie got a lot of criticism from so-called war experts on like how things actually went. I mean, there were more units that were actually in the Battle of Idang. I think there was a total of like 7 units that this whole battle lasted over a week and a half. But the reason why this movie just centered on 1-7 and Hal Moore's unit, because the book was written by Hal Moore and Joe Galloway.
Right. So it's their story.
Yeah, the book was called We Were Soldiers Once and Young.
And Young,
and came out in 1992.
Yeah, so they told a condensed version that they experienced firsthand and didn't include the other 57,000 things that were happening. Like, what else do you want from me, guys?
Yeah,
I lived.
They didn't write a history book. They wrote a first-hand
account, right?
Yeah, first-hand
It's
account.
basically epistolary, right? Yep, exactly right. But I love that. I love that bayonet push, like you were saying, because they rough dudes up on the way up. They get to the top of the hill, take even more VC by surprise, and basically like clear their stronghold. Like the Vietnamese commander gives the order because his second comes in like had been the American. It was completely reversal. Like the VC second in command comes in, listen, the Americans have overrun our position. We got to go. We got to get you out of here, like, Colonel or whatever. They
killed our last unit. There's no units in between them.
In between us. Yep. So it takes the Vietnamese commander all of 4 seconds to be like, pack it up. We're out of here, and you can see them. They're taking shit off the walls. They're folding up intel and maps, and they're all skadoodling down the tunnel network, which really needs like honorable mention on its own as like a facet of the battle. Tunnel network, terrifying that was there. It explains a lot.
How they were like popping out of like little spider holes,
hatches
all the time.
And shit. Yep. Crazy. But the Americans get up there and rough them up at the top.
Yeah, and like you saw plenty of scenes of Hal Moore talking to his soldiers, trying to talk them up. But then you have one scene after the first night where the VC colonel or general, whatever rank he was there.
I think they called him colonel. I think he was Mel equivalent. I think
colonel, and he's there and he's talking to them. He's like, "You guys fought well. We found out that their artillery uses a shield, so we have to get underneath." Like talking tactics, and he comes up, he checks on one of the soldiers who's like a little injured, and he gives him a pat on the shoulder.
The head bandage. Mm-hmm.
Like you see him talking up his soldiers the same way our colonel. So I think it was very respectful. I said that at the beginning of this. I'm going to stick with that. It was very respectful to the other side, even though we were considered enemies at the time. It still held them in a respectful light,
dignified light.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I think that's a big difference between, again, we were talking about like 80s movies with Heartbreak Ridge last week. A lot of these movies, when they originate in America from that time period in the 80s, we tend to go the one-dimensional, two-dimensional cartoon villain route. Like the mustache twirling communist is a thing in like those old the Braddock movies, the Mission Impossible movies, the later Rambo movies, not First Blood, because that's not a war movie, you know what I mean? But like when he goes back to the jungle or when he goes to Afghanistan, and so like they all become the same cardboard cutout, bog standard, stupid Americans, yeah. Like this guy wasn't the Vietnamese colonel in this was not that. Like you said, for all the same reasons he was great. That Mel Gibson's character was great at his job. Like the one scene at night where Mel Gibson's basically moving like position to position, checking on his guys. You know what I mean? Like that was exactly like you said with the Vietnamese commander, like inspecting his men after the first battle too. Side note for funniest scene in the movie though, before we get out of here, when the mortars are too hot to reload because we don't want any rounds to go off and we're out of water.
Yeah.
And Mel Gibson, without hesitation, just pees on it. And he's like, all right, everybody pee on this. Let's do it. And they all know he's right because you got with the low shot of like the 6 of their boots standing around the mortar tripod just peeing on the tube. I'm like, necessity is the mother of invention. We're out of water. We may as well pee on this mortar and get it going because it's keeping us alive. I thought it's humor, but it's also serious. And that's, I like that, like it had its place in time. Like it wasn't really a kind of a movie where it's like, we're going to take fire, like, and the guy next to me takes a bullet through the helmet and dies, and I have a pithy one-liner, and then I go back to shooting nameless enemies in the trees,
Yeah.
So like I liked it for its tone and its seriousness. But all right, I think that should wrap us up. So any final words on We Were Soldiers, dude? Good, great pick, by the way. I'm glad we went back and checked this one out.
Yes,
definitely.
If this one doesn't hit you in the gut when you watch it, then you just don't have a heart.
Check the pulse. Yeah.
Yeah. But looking back, I'm glad we watched this one. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. Sit down, watch it, and yeah, just understand what these men went through and what the wives went through at home. I think,
Definitely.
as I said before, this captures that perfectly. But yeah, my final thoughts is I'm really glad we're doing this month. It's important. If you don't remember your past, then you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, dude, for sure. And again, we're gonna stick with our no score policy, given the somber tone of a lot of these movies. These aren't meant to rah anybody into, like getting fired up to go do something that they might not want to do, or coerce you into thinking one way or the other. So no scores. Recommend you see it, like Kingsley said, just for the historical value of understanding, one of many battles that was fought in the theater, in the war, and to see the impacts on not only just the guys, but the command and the wives at home, to understand some of the unit dynamics, the difference between people. Like you were talking about, the Chris Klein character was trying his best to be a leader, up and coming leader, looking after his guys in small, meaningful ways that, were important. And the other dipshit's just like, contact, let's capture him as a scout. And he runs an entire, would you say it was a platoon level, into a barrage of AK-47 fire.
He just,
like you found out the hard way, they weren't farmers.
They were trying to hold him back. You saw like Sergeant Savage trying to hold him back and stuff like that. And he's like, let's take him prisoner. And he started running after him. And
dude, he Leroy Jenkins his whole group of guys.
Yeah, got them too far outside the perimeter, because they would have just stayed at the creek bed. It would have been fine for them. I mean, not guaranteed that they would come home, but I bet more of them.
No, but that instance of what happened
instead of KIA.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for Winterwolf here at Kingsley on the other side. That was We Were Soldiers. Check it out as we continue our Salute to Our Soldiers month. We did Black Hawk Down. We've done Heartbreak Ridge. That'll be coming up soon. And then We Were Soldiers, obviously, this one. And next one,
you'll find out.
I'm always forgetting the name. I guess we won't tell you. We'll see you guys later.